Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are coming together to share their insights and wisdom so we can all grow together. And today we're talking with someone from the New York area, and I'm excited to chat with him. We talked a little bit about the scenes, and he's telling me about his new dog that he got. And I am in rescue and an animal lover, so this is like one of my new best friends. Let me tell you who I'm bringing on to the show today. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Ben Goodfriend. Welcome to the show, Ben. I'm excited to dive in.
Thanks, Heidi. Thank you for having me, and it's great to be here. And yes, as you said, proud new owner of a dog. So if you hear any barking in the background, she's been relatively quiet and well behaved so far. But listeners, you know why, and we won't edit it out because it'll add to the effect.
We will not edit it out because it's real. And I would love to chat with her too. So she's more than welcome to put in her 2 cents. And her name is Aspen for all of you listening, which is a cool
Yes, her name is Aspen. She's not camera shy. It appears she's taking a nap right now. So she'll be the star of tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome Aspen to your new family and welcome to the show. So Ben, can you kick us off and tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, so I am an advertising executive, specifically in the sports tech space. I work at a company called Fanserv. We monetize premium live sports streaming inventory. You can see I'm wearing my Packers hat. I'm a big sports fan, very happy with our result against the Lions last night. And, I've been here for about 8 months now. I've been in media and entertainment my whole career. Initially, I actually wanted to be a documentary filmmaker, and I
Wow.
started in the production space, working as a researcher, being on set for a few different documentaries during COVID. And then I transitioned to the business side of media and entertainment. I worked at William Morris Endeavor, the largest talent agency, specifically in the sports entertainment crossover group. And then before Fanserv, I was at a company called Amagi, which is a software provider for free ad-supported television, fast channels. So you can think Samsung TV Plus or the Roku channel. And that was really my pivot from more traditional content-focused media work to the technology supporting this media infrastructure.
Well, thank you for giving us an insight of who you are and where you got started. So you just shared you spent years in this industry in media and entertainment. So what are the biggest shifts you've seen and how audiences consume content today compared with like 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's two very high level trends. It's the duration of media that we consume and the delivery. So take COVID as a very natural inflection point. Before COVID, the amount of households that owned smart TVs, just meaning any TV that had the capacity to connect to broadband rather than just a HDMI input or a cable cord, but they weren't using them that way, that they were just using them as a monitor that would then connect to a dongle or a set-top box or a wall-in cable.
Mm.
And when people had more time to spend at home, and as people started to consume more through Netflix, really as the original streamer, more and more of those smart TVs became true smart TVs and were used as they were intended.
Mm.
So in parallel with the adoption of smart TVs as smart TVs, so you had Netflix releasing House of Cards direct to consumer for the first time. This is the first time that you could binge content. You don't have to wait for it to come out at the same time on the same network every week. You can binge content, you can stream it in home, and that trend is only heightened. Right now, about 60% of viewership is in streaming and 40% is in legacy cable. So that's the first one, right? The delivery of the content, how it's consumed, and then the duration, the short form user generated content on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, via YouTube Shorts is just becoming a larger and larger piece of the total viewership and the total ad spend ecosystem. So those to me are the two shifts in parallel, more over the top distribution or streaming, and then more short form content.
Yeah, that's interesting what you just shared because I had no idea. But now that I'm thinking back, I have a smart TV and I never really used it for what it was meant for until probably the time that you're talking about around COVID, because we were home more and my kids were home more. And well, we were all home, we were stuck home. So we were all definitely using it more. So that's very, very interesting. So what role do you think traditional media still plays in the world dominated by streaming and digital first platforms?
Yeah, I think Part of it has to do with how we define traditional media. So you look at a company like Disney, which epitomizes traditional media, and they're very diversified. They have theme parks, they own a tremendous amount of IP, they own ESPN. And if you take ESPN, that's a very good example of how they're taking this traditional media asset, right? The the most promising cable property, the most lucrative cable property throughout the past 30, 40 years, and they're turning it into a direct to consumer streaming offering. There is now, for the first time, a standalone ESPN app that has had a somewhat rocky launch, uh, where they're able to move their assets, their sports rights, their talent into the streaming ecosystem. Now, the other piece is that this is still a very profitable business. Cable is still a very, very profitable business. It happens to be in sectoral decline. The majority of the audiences on cable are now starting to phase out. It's older audiences, they're less enticing for advertisers. Interesting litmus test for this is if you watch cable news, maybe 60 to 70% of the ads are for pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
Lipitor and, different things. So you can see kind of the audience they're catering
Yeah.
to, but it's a very lucrative business. It's very sticky. Once you're subscribed to cable, you're less likely to churn out than, maybe like you subscribe to HBO Max because you want to watch White Lotus and then you subscription hop from one platform to the next. When people subscribe to cable, oftentimes the subscription is connected to their telephony, it's connected to their broadband. You have this triple play bundle. So a lot of those companies, again, it's all very intertwined. I spoke about Disney. You can take a look at Comcast, which is also an ISP, an internet service provider, and they have Xfinity in cable, and they provide the telephony services. They will roll everything into a neat little bundle and even have a streaming offering so that you feel like you're being introduced to this new era of media, but it's really the same fundamental offering. In terms of the role, I think news and sports really live at a high level keep that old media relevant. And it's either going to be, the last beachhead that allows a pure play cable company to stick around for another decade and be profitable and be part of a private equity roll up, or a la ESPN direct consumer app, we're just going to move those assets into the future and build streaming infrastructure around them. So I think you're going to see both. I think you're going to see 10 years of most likely private equity roll ups around different affiliate, local news stations, around some of those legacy properties, because they're still very profitable as they go in decline. And then the underlying assets themselves will continue to be transitioned into a more modern streaming business model.
So you mentioned bundling, Ben. So how do you think bundling, like you said, something we're seeing more and more of in the streaming world, how will it impact both consumers and the economics of the industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really funny because we basically just have cable by different delivery now. All of these VMVPDs, the virtual multi-channel programming distributors like YouTube TV are essentially providing a cable bundle with a better UI that you can log into from anywhere in the world. But if you look at the price point, if you look at the content that's available, it's very, very similar to cable. The other thing is, if you look at the average household streaming intake, they're subscribed to about three and a half different streaming platforms. So if you have YouTube TV for your live sports or DirecTV Stream for your live sports, and then you have Disney Plus, Netflix, HBO, Paramount, Peacock, you're paying what you were paying for cable. So the actual effect on households and consumers financially, well, if you're just going to watch Netflix and you want to do a $9 basic with ads tier, you can save a lot of money. If you still want that all-encompassing buffet menu of entertainment, then you're going to end up paying about the same.
So streaming companies, you mentioned, the subscriptions. Let me get that word right. And they're under pressure to become profitable, right? The goal is for them to become profitable. So what business models are emerging that might create more sustainable economics in the streaming space?
So the funny thing is the pressure for them to become profitable is actually a relatively new phenomenon. For a very long time, Wall Street just wanted to see dramatic month over month, quarter over quarter subscriber growth. The cost of acquiring subscribers was astronomical. You have to pay in the form of rebates, X months free to start on this platform. And then oftentimes after they finish their favorite show, they're going to churn. So very, very expensive to acquire consumers. And with these large valuations, Netflix is, inching towards being $1 trillion company in the next decade. They had so much free cash to go and just onboard subscribers. Now, Netflix, as Wall Street has increased pressure on profitability, has decided to stop reporting on subscriber growth. They no longer share that information on earnings calls. They're profitable. Disney Plus is now profitable in their streaming. Tubi, the free ad-supported, Fox-owned, News Corp-owned streaming platform, is now profitable. There's some accounting gymnastics going on in all of this, but the important underlying fundamental is that the economics are becoming more sustainable. The technology and the fixed costs are extremely expensive. If you watched NFL football last night, for the opening week, if you streamed it on YouTube or if you streamed Peacock for Sunday Night Football last night, you probably saw buffering at some point because the network was so crowded, depending on where you live. There's a cloud-based playout running in the background for any disaster recovery. I mean, all of this stuff, people often think of, the production and the cameras. There's so many fixed costs involved, not just with cable, but with streaming. And now if you're delivering both as a media company, not to mention the cost of rights to be relevant and have all of these premium live sports properties, it's very expensive. So that's one of the reasons why I think Netflix has resisted adding live sports. But if you want to be profitable, you need to have an advertising tier. If you want to have an advertising tier, you have to have live sports. I think that's the equation that we're starting to see play out. It's not sustainable to just burn cash as a streamer, even if you add subscribers, even if you have a great product and a great offering. At a certain point, you have to be profitable.
So we've talked a lot about sports. So let's talk about sports specifically. Like you were saying, live content is still king. So how are the streaming platforms approaching live sports differently than traditional broadcasters? And what does that mean for the fans?
So I'll start with the first part of the question, pointing to Paramount's recent deal with TKO, the holding company that controls the UFC. They paid $7 billion, $7.7 billion over 7 years for the rights to the UFC. Now, what that means is they wrote a check that was larger than the total market cap of Paramount right now. Obviously, the company was bought and is being run by the son of the founder of Oracle. So they can take it private if they have to, right? Like Larry and the Ellison father-son duo has a tremendous amount of capital and they can afford to do that. But I think it just shows how much buyers are willing to bid for premium live sports. Several years ago, the UFC wouldn't have even been considered a live sports property. And there's still a very niche audience that they cater to. Now it's extremely valuable, it's extremely resonant in the culture. But we're not talking about the NBA. We're not talking about the NFL. We're talking about the UFC. And they are certainly putting a larger price tag on it that Disney did with their ESPN deal. Yeah, I would point to the NBA, which recently had their rights come up. I think buyers and those legacy media companies that you spoke about and I referenced earlier know that the only way they can survive is if they have premium live sports. And now that technology companies like Google by way of YouTube and YouTube TV, Amazon by way of Prime, Apple by way of Apple TV are starting to get into the mix as bidders for those premium live sports, there's no limit on how much these rights deals will go for. It's essentially you have $1 trillion companies that are in the mix in terms of the bidding. So the rights packages are only going to continue to go up, in my opinion.
Ben, how is consumer behavior changing as people are juggling multiple subscriptions? Because we talked a lot, you talked a lot about that today. What does that mean for consumer loyalty and retention?
I mean, there is no loyalty. I think there's certainly affinity for somebody like a Netflix, and maybe there are streamers that a viewer would be less likely to churn out of. But if you look at the most price sensitive viewers, it's pretty easy to do a month to month churn where you pick HBO for a month, you watch The White Lotus, and then you cancel. And then you sign up for Apple TV and you watch Ted Lasso and you cancel. And the streamers themselves can't afford to do a lock-in, an annual lock-in, because it would disadvantage them so much in the long term. Now, Sling, which is owned by Dish Network, just introduced a day by day and week by week sort of micro subscription offering. So I think that shows you the direction they're going in. But I don't really think there's tremendous loyalty from viewers and consumers in terms of the streamer. The loyalty is to the content. The loyalty is to the talent. So if you love Ted Lasso, you'll follow it on whatever platform it goes to. Probably the best example of this in recent years is The Office. The Office was on Netflix. So the loyalty was to The Office. It wasn't to The Office on Netflix. When it went back to Peacock, it's like following transitioned to Peacock. Certain platforms definitely help content if it can reach the top of that platform. Another great example of this is Suits. It was a popular show when it was on USA, but when it got to Netflix, it had an enormous resurgence because a bingeable, streamable format really lent itself to that content in a way that you didn't have when it was on cable. So there's some interplay, but when we talk about loyalty at the end of the day, I think it's about the content and not about the platform.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more because I see when you as you're talking about that, I see myself doing that because I've done it. Like my one subscription that I do have, and I'm very loyal to is Netflix, only because, like you said, I just feel like they're bringing on shows all the time, and right now they're highly promoting Suits. So you mentioned that, and all I see when I go on there is them promoting Suits and pushing it. So, yeah, I find what you're saying very interesting, and I've seen shows go on over to Peacock, and I'm like, oh, now I got to join Peacock.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Peacock is going to see an enormous bump in subscriptions from Sunday Night Football last night, and then they're going to see a number of those subscriptions churn. If you have like a free week promotion, somebody's like, I want to watch the game, I'm going to sign up. But some percentage of those subscribers will stick around. So if you dumb it down, it's really not that complicated of an equation that you need to plug into a spreadsheet, at least for the short term. It's okay, what's the cost of acquiring this game? What's the cost of producing and distributing this game? And then what is the lifetime value of the added subscribers that don't churn who come onto the Peacock platform? Now, there's a ton of other things to take into consideration, right? People are going to stick around and they're going to watch the new show after the game on Peacock, and you can sell ads against that. And it's important for Comcast's brand. But at the end of the day, that's really what the core economics come down to is it's the cost of the subscriber acquisition, it's the cost of the content, and then it's the lifetime value of the viewer. Said differently, can you get them to stick around?
Yeah. So, what are you seeing as far as I would like to shift a little bit to marketing and visibility. What are you seeing, whether it's in the company you're with or with the streaming platforms? Like, what are the ways that they're standing out? Because as we talked about earlier, and we touched on the streaming space is highly competitive, as you've been sharing with us. So what are you seeing as far as like what's working out there for them getting in front of the consumer and staying relevant and top of mind, and possibly some things that maybe you're seeing that haven't been working for them?
Yeah, I think Netflix has eventized their platform in a really interesting way. The Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight is a great example. That event broke many records, and the viewership was akin to that of certain NFL games. It was that much. That's something that just wouldn't be on primetime television. Probably you wouldn't see it on, ABC or CBS or Fox or NBC, one of the legacy broadcast platforms, because there's sort of brand misalignment. It's just not something they would do. And for Netflix, that is perfect because it draws someone to the platform. Somebody might subscribe for a month to see that event, and then maybe they stick around when they find other stuff they like. Same thing with an NFL game on Christmas. That's new to Netflix's portfolio, and that eventized sort of destination viewing is very helpful for them. So, in terms of the differentiation, I think the user interface and the viewer experience is pretty consistent across the board. It's a matter of the content that you have. I think Paramount is positioning themselves in an interesting way because they just did an enormous deal to get the South Park rights, and they did an enormous deal to get UFC, and they have the whole Taylor Sheridan Yellowstone universe. So you can almost see a more specific niche that they're carving out, sort of young, male oriented. You even call it like a brosphere streaming chunk, right? UFC, South Park, Yellowstone. You see the connective tissue and common denominator there. So that's an interesting approach to me. And Disney obviously does the same thing with their kids' content on Disney Plus. You've got your Star Wars. I think that's a winning combination. I think having a vision and some specificity in who your target viewer is, that's the promise of streaming in the first place, is you don't have to find the sitcom that hits the most, 18 to 55 year olds across the country that just everybody likes. If you have different properties that enough subgroups love so much that they're going to subscribe to your platform in order to watch, that's a winning strategy. So when you find these different audiences and say, I'm going to cater to them, I think that that's a good way to differentiate. Netflix is still in the we're going to make everyone happy pool. And if you asked any of the executives on the record at any of those streamers, everyone would say the same thing. They want to make everyone happy. They want to have something for everyone. But in the background, I do think that you see now some more specialization.
Yeah. And that's interesting because that's just like it is in the online space as far as like B2B and B2C goes. I've worked with female entrepreneurs, coaching them through business. And we used to always say, you need to find a niche. You can't serve everybody, right? Broad is broke, nature and richer. Netflix is doing it. But in a regular, typical norm, everyday business, as you're learning to grow, you're better off honing in on whether it's the result you provide, the service you provide, or the people that you cater to, the end user. And then once you get successful there, I'm always the belief that then you can start expanding, because then you can start leveraging that revenue and grow bigger. But yeah, I didn't even think about that. Netflix has done a great job of serving everyone. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. I mean, and they come up a lot, not just in this conversation, but in any conversation about this stuff, because they invented the medium in many ways, right? They were mailing DVDs when Blockbuster was brick and mortar, and they understood that direct to consumer was the trend before the technology was even there, right? That's what mailing DVDs was, direct to consumer. And the technology is now caught up in a big way. It's only going to continue to get better. And as it improves, I think the fixed costs will come down for these platforms. But, going up against a Netflix, I think the only way to really do it is to be an enormous technology company like Amazon, Google, Apple. They all have different sort of attributes. Apple bought the MLS rights because Messi came to the MLS. They want to sell more iPhones in Argentina and Brazil and Chile. And Amazon wants you to come onto their platform and watch The Boys because it's probably more likely that you'll then stick around and buy toilet paper, right? Like all of these different players have different goals in the space. And the companies that I think are going to be able to stand and really trade blows with Netflix are either those companies or companies that have a more legacy media offering, own an enormous amount of intellectual property, and have ancillary businesses like being an internet service provider, like owning and operating theme parks or cruise lines.
Yeah, but it's interesting because people could have thought the same thing about Netflix when they started. Like they're crazy to go up against Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
Because Blockbuster just didn't think they thought they had a great thing going, which they did for a certain amount of time. And then, like you said, technology was advancing, things were changing, and Netflix saw where the future was going. And they figured out a way how to bridge that gap without going fully into the technology because we just weren't ready for it yet. So they were like literally started with that mail-in campaign. And then when we were all ready to go, it caught up and could, and the technology caught up, they were able to pivot, but in a way that really scaled them and took them to the next level. So I think if you find a way of entering the space in a innovative way that's a little different, and you know that this is your end goal, but you're going to start here in order to get there, I think there's a way that, you can compete, but that you're not going to going after the big dogs, right? You're trying to figure you're finding your own little niche and what makes you special and stand out in that way, which is, I'm glad we talked about that because it's a whole different, it's a visibility strategy, which is what Netflix did.
Absolutely. A great example of that company called Friendly TV, which was started by a bunch of former Dish Network executives. They saw a gap in the market, which was for a skinny bundle, right? Like having the History Channel and A&E and Lifetime, these live TV legacy cable properties that you can't get on Netflix, and selling it at a very attractive price point. I'm talking $6 to $8 a month, selling ads against it. That company, Friendly TV, was just bought by Roku for about $100 million.
Wow.
So they saw a gap. They weren't competing with Netflix, that explicitly not doing that, right? But there's absolutely more gaps in the ecosystem, in the space, and there's still plenty of opportunity.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a fun and cool conversation. So thank you, Ben, for your time. Can you share with us how people can connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best place.
Awesome. So we're going to let you know how to find Ben. If you're driving, don't worry, we got you. Check out the show notes and we'll have all of his contact information there as well as his bio. And you can learn more about Ben. And I'm sure he'll be popping Aspen on that LinkedIn channel too. We're looking for her, Ben. So
Absolutely.
share her with the LinkedIn community. If you're watching Ben and I on YouTube, thank you so much. We're happy to have you here. Drop a note for Ben below and send this out. Share this interview with Ben out, this episode out to people who you think would benefit from this conversation. We'd love for you to share. You can also hit that subscribe button. Talking about subscriptions, this one's free, but it allows us to alert you to when we have another more amazing guest like Ben on the show. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform and you can leave a review, we'd love 5 stars. That helps the platform share the podcast as well as Ben out with more people. And if you want to write a written review, that helps us even more. We'd appreciate it. And for those of you who are new to the show, or if you haven't grabbed it yet, welcome if you're new. So happy to have you here. You joined in a great episode. So glad to have you. If you're looking to grow your visibility, we talked about Netflix, we talked about different streaming apps, what they're doing. But if you're feeling like you could use a boost in your visibility and you want some outside the box options, then go to Spotlight to Scale Blueprint. You can grab your Spotlight to Scale Blueprint. Go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint. We'll have that link in the show notes as well. It's free, it's yours. Then, before I let you go and wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share or that I didn't ask you on about or we didn't touch on today?
Yeah, I think just we did a lot of sort of high level industry analysis, getting into the weeds, but on a personal level, business and entrepreneurship, at the end of the day, you're dealing with human beings. And I think a lesson that I've learned is just to be gentle with yourself, be forgiving, and sometimes on the highs, acknowledge the role of fortune. It's not like you did everything yourself. And same thing on the lows. Sometimes you just get a bad bounce and it's not your fault. So it's a long race. I certainly feel like I'm still at the beginning, and be gentle to yourself and just remember to keep everything in perspective.
That's awesome advice. And I love that because giving yourself grace is key. We can beat ourselves up and take things hard when they don't go our way, but we have to, learning that failure isn't really failure. It's learning to keep moving forward. And I always say falling forward, but the quicker you get up and take action, the more clarity you're going to have. And anybody that's successful in life failed many, many times before they got their success. So that's awesome.
100%.
Thank you. So can you tell us more? What's next for you? What's over the next 12 months? What are your big goals? If we could bring you back in a year, what would success look like for you?
Yeah, right now I'm really focused on growing Fanserv's programmatic advertising business. We didn't even open the ad tech can of worms. That's probably a good thing. That gets pretty wonky pretty fast. But I'm helping to build a tool and a solution at Fanserv that is going to give advertisers access to this super valuable yet very fragmented sports streaming ecosystem. So I'm knee deep in that challenge. It's an exciting one. I love the team and the people over there. So I think in a year, if the pipes are working and all of the advertisers that want to be on their live local NBA, NHL, MLS, WNBA, you name it, game are able to do so easily through Fanserv, I'll be happy. That's what I'm laser focused on right now.
That's awesome. Well, you're going to keep us up to date on LinkedIn, right? About all that.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Awesome. So make sure you all connect with Ben on LinkedIn, Ben Goodfriend, and like I said, we'll have the link for you in the show notes. So Ben, thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a cool conversation. Like I said, it's very different from what we usually talk about. So it's been very exciting for me. So I appreciate your time. And thank you all for listening to Ben and I today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlight.
Thanks for having me, Heidi.
Absolutely.